Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing fine. Welcome back to another session. This is chapter 9, Traders, Kings and Pilgrims. So in today's session, we are going to focus more on this aspect of the chapter, that is pilgrims. Yes, you got me right. So we learn what were the pilgrims looking for. The quest basically means the search. What was their search for? And also I'm going to focus on the beginning of bhakti, which is quite different to what we have nowadays. Yes. All right, so let's get started by explaining you what does the term pilgrim stand for. See, pilgrim basically means any person who's traveling, who's undertaking some journey to reach to a holy place, a very sacred place for for worshipping, for some religious purposes. That person is called a pilgrim. If we've got group of people coming together, so we often used to have this word in case you've attended the session. They were known as caravans. So these were the group of people who used to travel together in order to avoid the disasters that could happen in the journey, that could take place in the journey, because often they used to travel through deserts. They often used to travel through very hostile territories. So in order to face all that, if they're in a group, used to become very, very easy, right? But otherwise, in today's generation, in the recent times, what we understand by caravans, it is basically a travel trailer in which you can just live and travel across the world or maybe distant locations. I hope you're clear with this one. All right. So what happens is these caravans were not only related to the pilgrims, but often we see caravans related to traders. Traders also had groups in which they used to travel from one place to another to distant lands. Caravans was one of the way in which they used to travel, or maybe they made use of ships if they had to sail through the sea. Okay, so now let me tell you about few of the most important Chinese Buddhist pilgrims who happened to travel to India. God, these people were inspired by the teachings of Lord Buddha and they traveled to India. Yes, way back, let's start with Faxian. Right, he came to India around 600 years ago. After that came Zhuangzang. I'm going to talk about him. He's very special. I'll tell you something very interesting about him. He came to India around 400 years ago. And there's another important person whose name is Ai Xing. He came to India around 450 years later when Zhuangzang came to India 50 years later. So around 1350 he came. So when they visited here, the basic objective was to visit Buddha, where he was born, where he achieved enlightenment, and also to visit some of the very important monasteries from where they could find some evidence related to Buddha and his life. So every person generally who used to visit who used to have this religious trip to another cross very hostile territory over to distant lands, they often used to write something about their journey, how they traveled, how dangerous it was, how they went to different locations. So we've got a lot of information written about them. And often they used to carry with them some books back on their way. And one of the important person who tried to achieve the same, carry some knowledge back with him, his name was Wang Zhang. Now what happened is, this person, Zhuangzang, he managed to enter the Indian subcontinent through China. That's perfect. That makes sense. Like you can see, from here, he entered India, or maybe he entered. Now, while he was leaving, you can see here we've got Indus River. So he left the subcontinent through this route, right? Because we didn't have very fixed, we had very fixed routes through which they could travel, but we didn't have the fixed direction in which they could go ahead, because at that time routes were not so well developed. So what happened is, this person, while he was on his way back with some sacred statues of Lord Buddha that he managed to achieve from Mathura. We've got a lot of statues made at Mathura, and also some of the manuscripts he carried with him 600, not 6,000. He carried with him 600 manuscripts, written material, right? And when he was crossing this Indus River, here you guys can see this is Indus River. While this person left with Buddha's statue in the form of gold, silver, or sandalwoods, he had 20 horses with him, right? On which he carried all that stuff, manuscripts plus statues. So what happened is, all of a sudden, the flow of the river increased and he happened to lose 50 manuscripts. Yes, he lost 50 of those manuscripts, which did cost him a lot. I think if you lose that important document, that thing that's written by hand, because print media didn't come at that time, we didn't have printed books, so that costed him quite a lot and he was disappointed. Plus, he devoted all his life, the rest of his life, in converting these or translating these rest of 550 manuscripts into Chinese, because these were written in Sanskrit, right? And he wanted to convert it into Chinese so that even his people can read and know about it. Isn't that interesting? What was the quest of the pilgrims? Now you know they wanted to achieve knowledge, they wanted to get with them some stuff, some religious stuff that existed in different parts and that could help them achieve enlightenment, that could help them achieve knowledge, help them liberate from the sorrows of life, right? And that brings us to the beginning of Bhakti. Was it just the Buddhism religion that evolved at that time? No. We've got Bhakti movement that started, as I told you in the earlier sessions, during the Vedic period, especially the early Vedic period. People used to worship the natural forces. For example, Agni Lord, Indra Lord, Bhagwan. So they used to worship the natural forces because they didn't have a lot of statues back then. But as the time evolved and Hinduism gained more and more importance, we've got different deities, which means different gods who came to existence. For example, we now also worship Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu. It is not only the god, but also some important goddesses. Yes, we worship goddesses also. For example, Durga. Ma Durga is also known, very much popular among all the people, and we celebrate Durga Puja. We celebrate her every year, right? So this is Hindu goddess of war. Goddess of war, right? Okay. So the basic idea that this goddess wants to convey here is that there's a dharma, that there is always power of good over the evil, that good would always destroy the evil forces. Correct? So anybody could worship these god or goddesses, and it could be rich, it could be the poor people, it could be men, women, lower caste people, upper high class people. Anyone could follow this path of bhakti, which means you generally have to worship. Now, this bhakti basically means you understand your devotion. You know, you are dedicated, you have devotion, you have feeling, you have faith. So if I want you guys to know what does the word devotion here stand for, now we've got a lot of rituals, practices. That didn't exist back then. It didn't talk of all the sacrifices that we make nowadays. Devotion here basically means you feel loyal. You worship someone, you care for someone, you admire, you dedicate yourself, you show commitment, affection. That is what exactly devotion in bhakti stands for. Is that clear? So this idea of bhakti, this particular idea of bhakti, we see it in Bhagavad Gita. I'll tell you what is Bhagavad Gita. And further, it is also a part of one of the famous books, Mahabharata. Right? So we see the notion of bhakti, the idea of bhakti in Bhagavad Gita. Now, those who do not know what is Bhagavad Gita, in Hinduism, we consider Bhagavad Gita, which talks about Gita. It's basically a song. It talks about it's a song of the God, and it is one of the earliest text written in Hinduism, and this was composed by Vyasa. You'll read about him in the later section also. So this is basically one of the text that is 700 verses, a Hindu script that is there in the epic Mahabharata. Now, what is this Mahabharata? We often call it Mahabharatam. Yes, Mahabharatam. It is one of the earliest books written in Sanskrit. This is in Sanskrit. Correct. So this is, one is Mahabharatam and the second one is Ramayana, in case you don't know. So Mahabharatam, we'll talk about it in the next session also. It is basically about the Kurukshetra war. And this Kurukshetra war was fought between Kauravas and Pandavas. You might have seen a lot of celebrities being asked this question. So it was fought against Kauravas and Pandavas on one side, and it's famous for this Kurukshetra war. So it is Bhakti find its presence in Bhagavad Gita, which is again a part which is included in Mahabharata. Also here you find Lord Krishna, the story of Lord Krishna, Krishna the Lord. So he asks Arjuna, who's one of his devotee, his student, that if you abandon all the worldly affair and in case you want to get away from the evil thoughts and everything that bothers you, you just give up and take refuge with me. So that is what he did, and he managed to achieve enlightenment and freedom from the sorrows of his life, from the pain, from the misery. Is that clear? So when I talk of bhakti, I hope all of you are clear by now. It does not believe in any kind of sacrifices that are being done. It basically means you, with your pure heart, you show some devotion towards the God, and that God would appear in any form, in the form you really wish to see. It could be in human form, lion, tree, tiger. So this idea gained popularity in the later stages, and people started to emphasize on this. So people started to make money out of it. They came up with a lot of sculptures, and these sculptures, they were placed at a special place. They were called special homes, and these special homes we call nowadays as temples. Right? So we find evidence of bhakti not only in temples, but it's basically sculptures. Then you find a lot of poetry and also architecture, like sort of temple and all those designs here in the form to display, to get inspired by this notion of bhakti. All right. It has nothing to do with the sacrifices that one is involved in. It is basically with pure heart, you show firm dedication, commitment towards a particular god or goddess, and that god or goddess would definitely appear in front of you. So that's all for the session. In case you guys like the session, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next class. Thank you.